Coronavirus skeptics, apparently still a thing somehow. So as of like 3 minutes before I started recording this video, Governor Gavin Newsom of California just put the entire state on lockdown beginning at midnight tonight. So if I seem slightly out of sorts, that is why. It's pretty freaking crazy and scary right now. I have been a total news junkie for this whole week, following the news and the reports as they come out, the latest science. And while it seems that a lot of people are taking this very seriously, it's pretty clear to me from being on like Nextdoor and Facebook and like reading the comment sections for some of these articles that there are a lot of people that are still not convinced that this is a really big deal. And it's a big deal that they don't think it's a big deal because they could be putting a lot of people's lives in danger. So on that happy note, I made a list of all the reasons people think that coronavirus is not a big deal, and I'm going to talk about why it actually is a big deal and why everyone needs to be doing their part to slow the spread of coronavirus. So I made a list. The first one is it's just gonna go away in the summer like all the other flu viruses. We do not know that. This is a new virus. We don't know how temperatures will affect it yet, and because it is a global pandemic, the southern hemisphere, which is heading into the colder months, is going to continue to see an outbreak, while in the northern hemisphere there may be some reprieve in the warmer months. We don't know, but even if there is, it seems likely that there will be a second wave in the fall. So this is not something that's going to go away as much as we wish it just would. Number two, there aren't that many cases or deaths in my area. The unfortunate thing about this is with our lifestyles and the way that we travel around from place to place, you have no idea who has just come back to your area that could be a carrier for the virus. And we know that each person that has coronavirus is going to infect an average of 3.33 people. So that means that it's doubling every 3 days, which creates an exponential curve. So just because there are no cases or few cases in your immediate vicinity does not mean that you will be spared, that your area will be spared, that there won't be a major health crisis in the very near future. Also, a lot of places don't have very good access to tests still. So it's estimated that there's at least 5 to 10 cases for every one that is confirmed. In Long Beach, where I live, it was just announced that we got 1,000 tests for the entire city, and they're trying to figure out how to allocate them and who's gonna get tested, which is just terrifying. And then next up is the media is blowing this out of proportion. Listen, like, some healthy skepticism for the media is always a good thing. Like, you don't want to just believe everything that you're told at face value. However, skepticism means nothing without also taking the time to really do your own research and understand what the current findings mean. Anytime you see a new piece of information, you should look for the sources, look for experts in that field that are authorized to talk about this, look for a foundation of solid research that is peer-reviewed, ideally. There is so much good information out there right now that's broken down in a really approachable way. You just have to do your own research. You may not want to believe these terrifying things that the media and the government are throwing at us right now, but unfortunately, like, they're right. Like, the research says what they say it says. And then next up is what's the big deal if I mostly quarantine myself, if I wash my hands, if I try to keep my distance? The reality is like 70 to 80% of compliance with quarantine doesn't count as passing. Like, we don't round up to pass in this. The more strictly you can comply with quarantine measures, the better it will be for everyone. Because there's still so much that we don't know about this virus. It looks like it lives on surfaces for a while. There's some debate about like how it's transmitted between people. Is it just droplets? Is it airborne? Basically, every time you're going out in public, every time you're around people, you are taking on some risk. So even if you're mostly doing good, but you're relaxing and you're kind of like hanging out with people at the park or whatever, it's still a really big risk. And it's a risk that you're taking on the behalf of millions of other people beyond yourself. Next up is... these aren't in order. The next one really bothers me because it comes from my own age group, which is, I don't have to worry about this because I'm young and healthy. Listen, like, first of all, young people do have to worry about this. It is much more deadly to young people than was originally suspected. A lot of emerging cases are for people under 40. A lot of emerging cases and hospitalizations, I should say, like very serious cases, are for people even under 30. But even people that are like, oh, well, I'm not worried about myself. Like, so what if I get sick? Like, can you think about other people maybe for like just a second here? Because younger people are more likely to be asymptomatic carriers of the virus, which means that if you're just young and going about your life and hanging out with your parents, your family, your friends, your coworkers, and not really taking it that seriously, you could be passing it on potentially to all of these people without even knowing it. And that's a really heavy thing to be potentially faced with after the fact, that you pass the virus on to all these other people, potentially people that you really love and care about. And then, you know, even if you get it yourself and you're hospitalized, like, hopefully you'll be okay, but hospital resources are not, are scarce right now. You could be competing for a bed or for a respirator, or a ventilator with someone else that also needs it. We have an obligation to stay healthy to the best of our ability right now to conserve these resources, which are limited right now. And then next it's, oh, this is a good one. It's, my liberties are being infringed upon as an American. As much as I kind of like make fun of this one, I also really deeply get it, because it's one that I kind of relate to in a way. Like, as Americans, we're in this culture that's so individualistic and so pro-individual freedom that this is like really oppositional to what we're used to. I myself am really used to traveling all the time. I'm used to going to bars, to parties, to restaurants, to coffee shops. I love being out. I love being around people. And it was really, really hard for me to give that up. It was a really, really big deal, and it felt really counter to who I am as a person, and to a lot of things that are so important to me. But the thing is, we have to put that aside temporarily, because it's only through collectivism that we can get through this. It's only through forming communities and looking out for the best interests of everyone and not just what we want to do that we will get through this. And then finally, I have, this is no big deal because swine flu, because SARS, because the seasonal flu, whatever other virus or past pandemic. This one really bothers me because this is such a big cognitive bias that we all have, that we all can fall prey to. It's assuming that because you haven't been personally affected by any of these past pandemics, because the death rates didn't ever get up to the hundreds of millions, that this one won't either. And this is not SARS, this is not swine flu, this is not the seasonal flu, this is something completely different. So just because another virus has a certain outcome, it does not say anything about what's going to happen with coronavirus. We need to take this really, really seriously and not allow our bias for past events to cloud our judgment here. So at the end of the day, like, it's really scary. It's hard to face. I think a lot of people, when they're faced with scary stuff like this, the first place they want to go to is denial. It's like burying their heads in the sand. They just don't want to face it. And I also kind of felt that way, but denying that it's real doesn't make it not real. The reality is we are going to be dealing with this probably for some time. It's going to be a major disruption in our way of life. Things are going to get a lot worse as this virus spreads, and our best chance is to slow the exponential spread of this virus, to allow our medical system more time to prepare, to allow possible treatments to go through, hopefully a vaccine in the not too distant future. But we have to take this seriously. I mean, for myself, like, I would not be doing this if I didn't 100% believe that this is real, that the research is real, that this is what we need to be doing. Do you know how hard it was for me to give up going to parties, all these things that I love, traveling? I canceled trips for this. Like, if I, like the most free-spirited, independent person out there, like, if I was willing to give all of that up for this, like, that says a lot about the gravity of the situation, because I would not give that up for, like, anything. And I just have to say, like, to these young people that are not taking this seriously, instead of recklessly going out and potentially endangering other people in your community, what you should be doing is you should be contacting all the senior citizens you know in your area and asking if they need help, asking if you can run errands for them, giving them your contact info just in case. Blood drives are drying up. It was just announced that there's a blood shortage where I live because people aren't donating blood right now. If you feel that you are healthy and able to do that, consider doing that. Consider how you can help in this time of great need, because that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself in this time where history is unfolding before our eyes. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to look back on this time, and what kind of person do you want to remember having been? I've been thinking a lot about this, and I want to be someone who helped my community, that did the best that I could. I think it's a really, really, really big responsibility, and there are no bystanders at this point. We are all a part of this. We all have a role to play, but no one can make that decision for you. So picture yourself when you're old, when you're with your grandkids or your chosen family, and you're telling them about this unprecedented time in your life. And think about what kind of person you want to be when you look back. I can't make that decision for you. No one can make that decision for you. So think about that. What kind of person do you want to have been when this is all over with?